for candidates. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Christine Fry. She has lived in Lewiston for 21 years, but she and her family are fourth-generation Cottonwood residents, farmers, and merchants. Christine is a proud Lewis Clark State College graduate, and she went on to earn a master's degree from Loyola University, which prepared her for her role as executive director of the Clearwater Economic Development Association for the past 14 years. It is better known as CEDA. Please welcome Christine. She will continue this program, and I welcome you all.
Thank you, Maxine. Good evening, candidates, and those of you participating as viewers and in the audience this evening. It is my privilege to facilitate the communication between the candidates and those of you. There are 5 candidates, 3 positions. And in my 20 years of experience in working in economic and community development in this region, I've come to appreciate how important the local elected officials are. And I'm very pleased that I had the opportunity to moderate this evening because I do recognize how valuable it is that we hear from the candidates what they're thinking and what their ideas are on issues. I commend each of the candidates for your individual passion towards the city of Lewiston and your sincere desire to influence the city in a good way. Now I would like to introduce to all of you each candidate, and I'm going to be doing this in alphabetical order. Gordy Gregg. Gordy, age 58, is a retired fire chief of the Lewiston Fire Department. He attended Lewis Clark State College for over 2 years. Gordy moved to Lewiston to begin his career at the fire department in 1980. He is married and has 4 children. Gordy has not held an elected office. Second, we have Jim Kleberg, 57. He is currently employed by Early Bird Supply. He graduated from the University of Idaho in 1984 with a bachelor's degree in Forest Products Business Management. Since 1985, he has lived in Lewiston. Jim is married and has 2 children. Since 2007, he has served on the Lewiston City Council and is currently mayor. Carrie Miller. Carrie is 39 years old, is the North Central Idaho branch manager of the Idaho Food Bank. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. She graduated from the transportation officer basic course at Fort Eustis, Virginia, and airborne school at Fort Benning, Georgia. Carrie has lived in Lewiston since 2004 and has 3 children. She has not held an elective office. Walter Brick Phillips, 52, is employed at Guy's Outdoor Equipment as a service manager. Brick graduated from Lewiston High School and from Lewis Clark State College with an associate degree in applied science auto mechanics. He has lived in the Lewis Clark Valley most of his life. Brick is married and has 3 children, and he has also not previously held an elected office. Jed Randall. Jed, 65, is retired from Potlatch Corporation. He graduated from Lewiston High School in 1968 and received a bachelor degree in psychology and fire science from the University of Idaho. Jed moved to Lewiston in the 1960s. He is a past secretary of the Local 712 of the United Paperworkers International. Jed is married with 2 children and is currently serving on the Lewiston City Council. Before we begin with questions, I'd like to go over the format and rules of tonight's forum. First, no portion of this televised forum may be used in a campaign. The televised broadcast will be daily broadcast on channels 13 and 56. It will be posted on YouTube, accessed through the City of Lewiston website. To the audience, please make sure your cell phones are turned off. There will be two primary parts to this evening's forum. For the next 50 to 55 minutes, candidates will answer questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidates have not received the question ahead of time. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer a question in rotation. The light board right here will be used to remind candidates of the time. Green to yellow means 15 seconds remaining. Red signals the end of the time allowed. If a candidate agrees with previous answers, they may elect to state their agreements and cede the time remaining, so we can move on to other questions. For the final 25 to 30 minutes, the candidates will have a chance to respond to questions from tonight's audience. Those in the audience, please use the lined paper and pencil provided at your seat. Handwrite your question and pass it to the outside of your row. Tonight's greeters, members of the LCSC Poli-Sci Club, will pick up the questions. Draft your questions in a way that allows candidates to respond in 1 minute. Questions from a specific candidate will be accepted. With these questions, other candidates may also comment as long as the response is within the scope of the original question. Collected questions will be reviewed by the League of Women Voters, and they do reserve the right to compile like questions and select the questions that they believe are most pertinent to the office. Candidates, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's get started. First question goes to Mr. Gregg. Why are you seeking this office, and what are your qualifications?
I'm seeking office because I want to improve city services. I think that a lot of times what gets lost in the scheme of things is the council sees just the capital projects that are ahead of them, the big things. And I think that our employees, when they're successful, we're successful as a group. And so I want to work with them to try and make the services that we provide the best that we can make them. My qualifications are I worked as a fire chief for 5 years, as a division chief in the fire department for 11 years. I worked as a captain prior to that. All of those areas were areas in which I was leading people. I believe that I can work with, and I've demonstrated that I can work with other parties, other departments, and certainly council members over the years. And so I believe that that is part of what enables me to be a successful candidate.
Mr. Kleberg.
Same question?
Yes.
Well, I've been on the council for a couple of terms, been the mayor for 2 years. What I'm really hoping to do is we have some big projects coming up, and I know Gordy talked about capital, but these are important projects for the citizens of Lewiston. We've got an opportunity to knock out a new airport, or airport fire station, which is going to be required by the FAA. We've already set the funding in place for that. Finish off the library. So we get the two biggies out of the way, we can start focusing on the community park, which I think is a sorely needed asset in this town. From other capital things, these are very important to the citizens here, is we need to start planning for the new water treatment plant. It's going to be a major upgrade. It's going to cost a lot of money. Bryden Avenue is another one that's going to need to be widened. That's already been on the books and planning started. And then, of course, we have the Main Street infrastructure that has to be replaced. I mean, it's old, and we're talking a big project there. So I'd just like to be part of that.
Ms. Miller.
Well, I'd just like to thank Maxine and Christine for being here and supporting this tonight, and everybody that was able to attend, and those of you that are watching at home. I've decided to run for city council primarily because I have chosen to make Lewiston my home. I've been here about 11 years, and I'm raising my family here, and I would like them to grow up in the best place possible. And I believe I can contribute to that because of my background and experience. I graduated with an economics degree. I was then commissioned as an officer, the United States Army, and went on to manage the Home Depot here in Lewiston. And now I'm serving as the Idaho Food Bank director. And I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I will let you know more about that later.
Mr. Phillips.
My name's Walter Brooke Phillips. Brick's a nickname. I got involved because I had some money left over from the last time I ran 2 years ago. And that money was given to me to run, so I'm running. And I would like to see, just some improvements in the lines of communication with everyone, a little more transparency. I would like to see something that the city could do to help get a new high school built in this area. We need one. I don't know if that's a city issue, but it's well needed. I was talking to my mother the other day, and she said when she was in high school in 1964, they were talking about building a high school at that time. I think along with the community park up there, it's a perfect location. Going into an old building like we are, it's a moot point. You're just going to Band-Aid that building up. You're landlocked. It's a dead issue.
And Mr. Randall.
Well, I've been on the city council for 4 years, and I've been involved in several organizations such as Valley Vision and CETA. And my emphasis would be on trying to create jobs and retain jobs that we have that pay well. Main reason for this is it'll be beneficial for everybody as far as consumers, and then also as far as taxpayers, so that we could improve our facilities, which, like Mayor pointed out, that we need some work with the community park, and we need to put a new fire station at the airport so we can keep the airport functional as far as the FAA is concerned, so we can keep more business in the community. And I'm also supportive of the port. I think we need a multimodal base here in the valley. Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to move on to the second question. I'm going to repeat the questions twice. If you get nervous and you forget what the question is, feel free to ask me again, and I'll share it with you. Second question. It's going to start with Mr. Kleberg. Do you support the concept of local option sales tax? And if so, how do you see it benefiting the city? If not, why not? So I'll ask one more time. Do you support the concept of local option sales tax? And if so, how do you see it benefiting the city? If not, why not?
Well, I do support the idea of local option sales tax. We've already used it here in Nez Perce County for a property tax reduction and the construction bond for the new jail. What I find unfortunate is the state, and I've been to meetings down there at the Association of Idaho Cities and stuff, and we've talked about this. Senator Chuck Winters has introduced this legislation several times that and keeps trying to refine it so it's more palatable, but basically the state treats us like petulant children that can't be trusted with their money. We're just a city government. So I think it's the time that it's allowed to all cities, because currently you have the resort communities, Sandpoint, Haley, I think Victor, Driggs, they're all afforded that opportunity to use it. I think we could use that for whether it's putting it in the form of an auditorium district. I don't know about the school issue, because they're pursuing that also, but we could use it.
Okay. Ms. Miller.
I would support a local option sales tax. I think it just gives us another tool to develop our community.
Okay. Mr. Phillips?
I agree with it. I think it's a good option to pay for the needed things that we need, school being a prime one. Brad Cuddy had mentioned that. I read that article in the paper today. Trying to get that through and, a little bit ahead of the curve instead of going down there and then trying to get it done. I think that's one of the options. I think the state should be stepping up and helping us with schools a little better than what they're doing. They are making improvements, but we've got buildings that need to be built. So I am in support of that.
Mr. Randall?
Yes, I'm in support of the local option tax with one stipulation, that it be okayed by a supermajority, not necessarily a two-thirds majority, but maybe a supermajority over 50% plus one. I think all taxes in that respect that are left for should be left to a vote for the citizens to determine whether they want to tax themselves or not.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Gregg?
I am supportive of a local option tax. Anything that can take some of the onus off of property taxes would be welcomed, I believe. And I believe the local option provides a much broader base in terms of spreading the wealth, if you will. More people would be contributing, and anything that we can do to take that onus off of property tax, I think, is a good thing.
Okay. Moving on to the third question, and this time I'm going to start with Ms. Miller. What do you think the city needs to do to help resolve the Urban Renewal Agency, or URA, conflict between the city and the county? I'll repeat it. What do you think the city needs to do to help resolve the Urban Renewal Agency conflict between the city and the county?
Well, obviously, I have no history with this agency or with the conflict between the city and the county. So I think the city's job in that matter is just to listen to what the issues are between the city and the county, and then look at the URA as a tool for economic development and what's best for the citizens that live here, and try to avoid that conflict. I would think we could work together to try to support the town.
Okay, Mr. Phillips.
The URAs, my understanding was that when they first came about, they were for blighted areas, infrastructure needs, and to fix those type of issues. A couple of these have been done. The plan, the way I understand it's been amended, and that has caused a conflict. It's going to be decided in court, and at that point, move on. And the legislature is going to be looking at it to see if there's any tweaking that needs to be done with the way they are administered. So we'll see what the court has to say.
Okay, Mr. Randall.
To some extent, I would say ditto. We're going to probably have to wait for the court decision on that, although our Senator Dan Johnson is in the process of getting some input throughout the state as being co-chair of a task force that's trying to decide what they can do in the legislature to modify the statutes concerning URAs to make it clear as to what can be done and can't be done. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we're going to have to do is wait for the courts to decide, and it'll clear up some of it, which will also help the legislature understand what things they're going to have to do as far as passing laws to clarify the statutes. But I think the URAs are a very important tool. It's if we could get the option tax, we could also have that with the URA.
Okay, Mr. Gregg.
I would concur. Resolution is in the hands of the judge at this point. But that doesn't stop us from continuing to have conversations, to try and work towards resolution, try and find those areas of agreement that we can mutually agree to. And I think the more communication, the better. And whatever we can do to facilitate that, I think that we should do.
And Mr. Kleber?
Well, I agree with that. It'd be nice to resolve this issue. I don't know that we're going to get anywhere without the help of with the courts. The one thing I'm looking at is currently there's only 2 projects being proposed. One's on 18th Street, North Lewiston. The other one potentially the extension Nez Perce Drive. I know there's been some talk about expanding the URA boundary to include Gun Club Road to take the burden off the county. And so if that goes through, I mean, it'd be nice. Otherwise, we're talking about 2 projects. Both these project areas can be closed out. Downtown can be closed out in a year. The Nez Perce Drive could be closed out in 2 years. The base will be reestablished, and we can continue forward. Other than that, I can say that we've tried communication with the county commissioners. 2 of them are here present, and so far we just, we're going our separate ways. So.
Okay. The next question will be directed to Mr. Phillips first. How do you see the legalization of marijuana in Washington impacting the city of Lewiston? And again, how do you see the legalization of marijuana in Washington impacting the city of Lewiston?
Well, it's only a river away. I mean, it's going to be a law enforcement nightmare. I think Washington has decided that that's the way they want to go, kind of like Colorado. But there's going to be some crossover of that. And it's going to be more of a burden for our law enforcement on this side because it's illegal here.
Mr. Randall.
I think the problem is not necessarily going to be marijuana in itself. The problem will be what comes along with it, and that will be things like meth and heroin are being a real popular item these days, and that's where we come into a problem here with increased crime, particularly things like robbery and probably also parking lot gun battles, that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be real difficult for our police here in Lewiston.
Mr. Gregg.
I think that the legalization of marijuana in Washington has created a hardship, certainly, not only for police, but the courts as well on this side. There's a difference of how much is legal on one side and illegal, all illegal in Idaho, obviously. But you can go from a misdemeanor to a felony in a big hurry without knowing that, driving across the river. It pains me to see that we only have $15,000 credit budgeted for narcotics enforcement, because I believe it's a big problem. Jed alluded to the fact that narcotics-related crime, burglary, theft, those types of things are growing exponentially, and we need to address those issues. So I'd like to see more money put into that as well.
Okay, Mr. Kleber.
Could you repeat the question?
How do you see the legalization of marijuana in Washington impacting the city of Lewiston?
Well, I would say that I don't know that it's going to be a huge impact on the city of Lewiston, marijuana itself. We've all talked about the narcotic trade. Meth and heroin are already here, and we have a big problem. And it's not just Lewiston, it's valley-wide. And not to sound flippant, but, a lot of people that smoke pot, I think, are a little too stoned to go and rob somebody's house. And to coin a phrase from our ex-mayor Poole, I talk about economic development. Perhaps we could take the Twin City Food Factory and turn it into a Doritos factory. Pick them off when they come across the bridge. So. I don't think it's going to impact us that much, the marijuana part.
Okay, and Ms. Miller?
So marijuana being legal, it's still not legal if you're under 21. It's still not legal in most workplaces. People are, drug tested randomly. And I think that there will be some effect on the city, but I agree with the mayor. I'm more concerned about some of the other types of hard drugs like meth.
Okay. The next question will start with Mr. Randall, and there was quite an article in the paper on Sunday regarding this issue. And what are area of public accessibility or Americans with Disability Act, ADA, do you see as the most pressing in our city as we move to greater compliance? What funding sources are available? So again, what area of public accessibility do you see as the most pressing in our city as we move to greater compliance? What funding sources are available?
I'm on the Disability Commission, and we're just starting to try to educate people in the Valley about the ADA and its requirements. And this is going to take a little time, but we start off with using what we found, the old transition plan that was had been modified a couple of times, and finally we have a 1995 version, which we're going to have to do a revision of that, and that's going to be the task of the new ADA coordinator for the city of Lewiston. And so the commission is mainly going to be working with the ADA coordinator to try to get education and also upgrade the transition plan.
Okay. Mr. Gregg?
I think that pretty much across the board, all areas of public accessibility need to be addressed. I don't think there's any one that's greater than another because we haven't really moved beyond the planning stage. I think one of the things that has happened in the past, and you get an unfunded mandate, and you move forward in that direction, and you go great guns until it comes time to determine where the money's going to come from. Right now, the money is going to come from the same place that it's coming for any other issue that we have. And so we're going to have a phased-in approach, I believe, over time, using the dollars and cents that we have available to us, because I don't know that there's anything out there that's going to provide us what we need.
Mr. Kleber?
Well, it's been kind of interesting, particularly this year, because it's been brought to the forefront by some ardent citizens that, are advocating for our compliance with the ADA. We do have a plan that was originally written, I think, in 1992. Like Jed said, it's been amended. I think we've done, as a whole, I think we've done a pretty good job with the buildings that we have here in the city to get into compliance. There's not part of the total rebuild of the library, but the upstairs ADA accessible restroom that's put out to bid right now is going to be a part of it. And again, with a new coordinator, something that we haven't had a dedicated body to that position, I think is going to be a good start. And I think what I see is one of the bigger issues, and you could see pictures in the paper, was the sidewalk access. So whether it's coming out of the streets or it's coming out of a different funding source, something we have to continue to work on.
Ms. Miller?
Yes, I think it's very important to have accessibility for people with disabilities, and I would work to make that happen here in the city. Mr. Gregg commented on the funding, and I would agree with him on that. I'm currently working on a project right now of building a new facility within this city, and I'm working through all of that process and adding a lot to our building to make sure that it is accessible for all people with our second floor and having an elevator and everything that comes with that. So it's challenging, but I think it's absolutely necessary, and I would agree with Mr. Gregg on the funding approach.
And Mr. Phillips?
The ADA, I had a cousin that was disabled when he was about 14 years old, and it was very difficult for him to get around when he was in a wheelchair. Fortunately, he was able to get on crutches and be able to finally get to a cane. But it's very difficult to get into certain buildings. I mean, if you just have steps, it's a challenge. I think as new buildings come up or remodels, stuff like that, I think that they need to be brought into compliance. As far as the funding, search out anywhere you can find it to help with that, to bring buildings up to code under the ADA.
Okay, we're halfway finished with the first round of questions, and I just want to remind those in the audience that if you have a question, please use the papers that provided to you, fill out your question, and pass it down to the end of the aisle, and someone will pick that up for us. So now we're on to the sixth question, and I'm going to start this with Mr. Gregg. Within the budget, there are discretionary areas that are important sources of funding in our community. What areas would you give high priority to ensure continued funding? And again, within the budget, there are discretionary areas or areas where you have options to fund that are important sources of funding to those in our community. What areas would you give high priority to ensure continued funding?
My perspective on the budget is one that's a little bit different than how it's currently operating. I would want to move towards a performance-based budget, something that provides us with an opportunity to look at issues that are specific, more along the lines of quantitative analysis, so that we can understand what's working and what isn't working within our city and trying to work to adopt those things. I think a political approach, which is what we've done in the past, and kind of work to try and figure out some different ways to do that, has not necessarily always been beneficial. And so I would like to work towards making sure that we're addressing issues specifically and within the scope that allows for taxpayers to understand that we value those tax dollars and that we want to use them efficiently and effectively.
Mr. Kleberg.
Well, that's an interesting question, because this year, for the first time, we do have a new city attorney. She's sitting back up there, Ms. Jana Gomez. We've had these discretionary funds for years, and I don't ever remember a time when we received requests and that we really debated the merits and this and that and everything. What we've done now is these are all contracts. We have contractual agreements. Valley Boys and Girls Club, Valley Vision. This is not all inclusive either. You know, CETA, Christine, beautiful downtown Lewiston, and basically, in order for us to legally to give money to these entities, that we have to have something in return that justifies where we're spending the money. Is the Boys and Girls Club spending it strictly here in Lewiston? Well, that's kind of a requirement for us, because they have 3 clubs, Lapway, Clarkson, and here. So I'm happy to help these organizations out. I think to provide a valuable service in this community, whether it's economic development or, youth-oriented, things like that. But yeah, it's time to get some accountability so that we really know what we're getting for the dollar.
Ms. Miller.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Sure. Within the budget, there are discretionary areas that are important sources of funding in our community. What areas would you give high priority to ensure continued funding?
I haven't reviewed the budget in depth to know exactly what the discretionary areas are, but I would say the things that we need to focus on and spend our money on are safety of the citizens, of children, of our seniors, and taking care of them medically, taking care of them through law enforcement, taking care of them through nonprofit organizations that do support their safety and well-being.
Mr. Phillips?
It's discretionary funding. I would like to see, I mean, they've got like Meals on Wheels for the elderly that can't, they can't get out of their house. They have a hard time. They may not be able to drive anymore. Certain kinds of things I think are just compassionate that should be done. That would be one of them. Valley Vision, for economic development, try to bring in people here. That would be another one. The accountability part, though, I mean, you want to get the most bang for the buck. So those would be two that I would like to look at.
Mr. Randall?
As far as the bang for the buck, sometimes there are certain functions that we have to perform as a society that doesn't qualify bang for the buck. And that'd be like your Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
And also your senior nutrition. But like Ms. Miller pointed out, is we need to focus on safety, and one of the issues with safety then is our infrastructure, making sure that we provide sewer lines, water. We can provide water for our fire hydrants and lighting for the neighborhoods, so we keep crime down, things like that. So infrastructure is my primary concern, and safety is too. But there are circumstances where you'll have you just have to have the money to, even though it doesn't necessarily give you a dollar benefit.
Okay. Our next question, and we'll start with Mr. Kleberg. What are the major challenges facing the city in the next 4 years? And again, what are the major challenges facing the city in the next 4 years?
In my opinion, the number one challenge we're going to be facing in the next 4 years is addressing our stormwater issue in this town. We've done a good job. We secured some FEMA grants for downtown, and they're one more year away from having that project completed. You have to start at the bottom. Everybody's heard a lot of complaining about all the money's being spent downtown. You have to start at the bottom before you can work your way up the hill. And I used to chuckle. I'd come down 17th Street in a blinding rainstorm. I could have taken my kayak down either one of those gullies on either side of the street. There's so much water running down there. We have a serious problem in this town with stormwater. And how to fund it, I guess that's the key. That's the number one problem. We did have one in place. It was shot down by Judge Bradbury. He ruled it as a tax instead of a fee. So we're currently working on that. But without that taken care of, I mean, we could spend all the money on streets and still have a problem.
Ms. Miller?
And the question was about the next 4 years and what are the issues facing the city.
Right.
I think one of the biggest issues is funding the new fire station and looking at our emergency medical services and making sure we have access to all people in the city for that service. I think there are other issues out there, like the mayor stated. There are some other funding opportunities that we have, but I think that summarizes what the biggest issues are.
Mr. Phillips?
I would like to see the community park move forward, get some ball fields built up there, and get that ready, for a new high school. I still want to see a new high school built here. It's been way too long.
Mr. Randall?
The primary concern, money.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. If we don't have money, we can't do projects. We can't provide parks. We can't provide fire stations. The problem with our money right now is it's only coming from one route, and that's the homeowner or business owner, which the homeowner has some latitude for getting a break with the circuit breaker or with the exemption that the state provides. The business doesn't have either. We need a broader tax base, and like Gordy pointed out, it'd be nice if we got that local option tax to broaden the tax base so we could still get money, but it would go out across a wider tax base.
And Mr. Gregg?
I would concur with Mr. Randall and pretty much the rest of the panel that money is the number one issue. Our funding is abysmal in terms of dealing with the real issues that face you as citizens and taxpayers. $2.44 million in foregone taxes. We've left a lot of money on the table. That being said, we can't keep kicking the can down the street and not expect something negative to happen at some point. So we're going to have to be forced to make some tough decisions to try and make sure that we're spreading that money in a manner that provides us biggest bang for the buck. And that's how we're going to be able to move forward.
Okay. Next question is, we'll start with Ms. Miller. Would you support a policy to reduce the amount of waste that is generated by city departments, which is now going into the landfill? Again, would you support a policy to reduce the amount of waste that is generated by city departments, which is now going into the landfill?
Yes, I would.
Okay. We'll move on to Mr. Phillips.
I would also.
Mr. Randall.
Being on the Solid Waste Commission, I would definitely support that.
Mr. Gregg.
Yes.
Mr. Kleberg.
Well, yes, and there's several city buildings around town that are currently carrying the blue cans for recycling and stuff. And I know at City Hall, there's volume of paper that goes out. I know it's being recycled too. So I think we're getting there. But yeah, it would be nice to have some sort of formal policy.
Okay, and we'll move on. And this one will be directed first to Mr. Phillips. What is your understanding of the role that the City Council plays regarding economic development, and what action directions would you pursue? And again, what is your understanding of the role that the City of Council plays regarding economic development, and what action direction would you pursue?
Well, I think the city has a big role in economic development, and to be welcoming to new members into here, new businesses into the valley, to attract new businesses, and that's about it.
Okay, Mr. Randall.
The city definitely has a role. I think we could also provide leadership in the form of trying to get several different agencies in the valley to cooperate with each other, such as the Chamber of Commerce, CETA, Valley Vision, the City Council of Clarkston, the City Council of Lewiston, the City Council of Stoughton, also maybe even the Nez Perce commissioners and the Stoughton commissioners. Trying to all work together on whatever means we can to encourage companies to come into the valley to provide employment. And that's what we should work on.
Mr. Gregg.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What is your understanding of the role that the city plays regarding economic development, and what action or direction would you pursue?
My understanding is through financial support of folks like Valley Vision and CETA, those folks. By the same token, again, we need, as a council, to do whatever we can to try and broaden that base, that tax base, to, again, reduce the onus of everyone's taxes. And not just with anything, but try to work towards those manufacturing jobs that are the types of jobs that are actually going to pay some people some money, be able to reinvest in our community and not create more competition between fast food places. So whatever we can do to help broaden that, I would support as a council member.
Mr. Kleberg.
No, thank you. Actually, the city, we actually do have a point person on our staff at Community Development, Jackie Gilbert, and that is part of her job. She does part of planning and zoning meetings and issues like that, but she's also does have a dedicated portion of her salary goes to economic development. She might be the point person, takes a phone call, and whether it's something that's pertinent to, say, the Joint Airport Authority or Valley Vision, beautiful downtown Lewiston, case in point, see to visit Lewis Clark Valley. It's good to have somebody on our staff. I've asked the question whether we're duplicating services, with all these different groups, but they all have their own niche, I think. And, another case in point would be like the beautiful downtown Lewiston. Brianne Durham, during her duration here, made a good personal, professional relationship with Mark Alexander, the guy that's investing in our community right now. And he's done a heck of a job, and I think part of it was due to the hard work of her getting him to look at buildings that were available.
And Ms. Miller.
Well, we have a lot of talented people working on economic development in Lewiston, and we've already mentioned all of those organizations, and City Council is really where those resources can converge and work together. And we would decide on funding for some of those. I also think City Council needs to support attracting the growth of businesses that we have here, developing a good qualified work pool to support the growth of those businesses at a rate that's best for Lewiston. And I think we could provide the leadership for that from the City Council.
Okay. And this is another reminder to our audience that you have an opportunity to ask a question. And please use the paper provided and put your question on that piece of paper and send it down to the end of the aisle. The 10th question is for Mr. Randall, and then we'll move around. What policies would you promote to ensure fair and competitive compensation for all city employees? Again, what policies would you promote to ensure fair and competitive compensation for all city employees?
Well, to start with, I don't think the old system can stand up to muster. I think we're going to have to come up with a different system. And the place I would go would be HR companies such as PayScale, which is out of Seattle, and there's other companies. There's another company I've seen in Kansas. It's has a system for setting up pay scales, and you work with we work with ranges. That's understandable, but I think there's PayScale has a system of what they call a matrix, and you do different criteria and where that person is on those criteria, and that adjusts their pay scale. So I think we're going to have to take a long, hard look at salary and benefits.
Mr. Gregg.
As a former employee of the city, I was on two ends of the spectrum, so to speak. I worked as a firefighter, was represented by the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1773. About 15 years into my career, I made a switch and became a management employee of the city and became a non-represented employee. I can tell you that I worked harder as a non-represented employee than I did as a firefighter, and my compensation was never quite the same. The council, unfortunately, took a bit of leeway with non-represented employees and didn't provide them with the type of COLA adjustments that were regular, if you will. And so I would work towards trying to make sure that all employees are treated the same.
Mr. Kleberg?
Well, I kind of agree with actually, I totally agree with Councilor Randall. Salary surveys that we've done in the past, and we've done several over the years, I prefer to see them based on competitive towns, comparative towns, not ones that have a huge tax base compared to ours. And we've used salary surveys that included Richland, Kennewick, Pullman. They're all experiencing population growth. And the fact of the matter is, here in Lewiston, in case you haven't noticed, we've had rather anemic growth. I've been here, lived here since 1985. Historically, we grow at about 0.1% a year. So to compare our wages, our local wages, and the cost of living to other towns that are experiencing growth and expansion of their tax base, I don't think is quite fair. So I'll just leave it at that.
Ms. Miller?
I managed the pay scales and wages for the Home Depot here in Lewiston. I had 140 employees and was responsible for managing those raises, the percentages that they were taken at. And we used extensive benchmarking with other companies, and I used the same thing at the Idaho Food Bank. You use extensive benchmarking resources to make sure you're paying your employees a competitive, fair, equitable salary, and that they have the benefits to match that.
Mr. Phillips?
I would agree that you have to have a matrix, and you have to look at cities of the same size and caliber, growth, what they're making compared to what they're making here as far as employees of the city. On the other end of the spectrum, outside the city, it's just whatever you want to pay, basically, because it's a right-to-work state. So they have protections working for cities that a lot of people don't, that are in the private sector. So look at those wages, see if they're fair and equitable for them, and compare them apples to apples.
Okay, this next question is just a little bit different, different format. I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to start with Mr. Gregg, and I'm going to just go right down the line. And I want you to respond with either a yay or a nay, like you were in the city council chamber and you were actually voting. And then after we're done, I'll ask you why you made that decision. Okay? So, would you vote yay or nay to fund a plan for stormwater runoff, which has been mandated by federal regulators? I'll ask one more time. Would you vote yay or nay to fund a plan for stormwater runoff, which has been mandated by federal regulators? Mr. Gregg, yay or nay?
Yay.
Kleberg,
Yay.
Miller,
Yay.
Phillips,
Yay.
Randall.
Yay.
Okay, so now we'll go back, and Mr. Gregg, would you tell us why you voted as you did?
Well, going back to what the mayor said, we do have a stormwater problem in the city, more so in the orchards, obviously, but we do have a problem, and so we need to address that. And so it's difficult to vote yay to an open kind of question like that, but without knowing the plan. But if the plan was right, we certainly vote for it, yes.
Mr. Kleberg.
Yeah, obviously it really depends on what the funding mechanism is and what that funding mechanism, what shape that takes. Coeur d'Alene quit collecting their stormwater fee after we got shot down in court, so did Nampa. And the reason was not because they'd been sued, just because they wanted to rework it so that it would stand up to the scrutiny of the court. So they'd actually changed their way of calculating the footprint that was contributing to the stormwater particularly up in Coeur d'Alene, where they're just using driveway access as opposed to the entire structure of the building, what they call the equivalent residential units is. And of course, they're collecting less money now, but they're collecting money and they're actually working on it. And they've got as big a problem there, even though it's flat, than we do, because it turns into a lake. As soon as the snow melts up in Coeur d'Alene, it turns into a lake. Every time we get a rainstorm, it turns into a raging river on many streets in this town. So.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
Well, if it's a federal mandate, obviously it's important and something that we need to look into supporting.
Okay. Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, if it is a federal mandate, the revenue sources to get it done would have to be looked at. I've seen the downtown area many times, because I've lived here my whole life, flooded down there. And you've got a river that's probably higher than the elevation of downtown in a lot of spaces. You're going to have to get rid of that water. I mean, one of these days, we're going to have a big one, and it's not going to be pretty.
Mr. Randall.
Well, if it's a federal mandate, unless you might be facing a chance of losing other federal money if you don't take care of that mandate. So, yes, you're going to have to come up with some money somehow, even if it's not very much, but just enough to keep the feds off your back.
Okay. We have one more question from the League of Women Voters, and then we'll go on to the audience questions. Mr. Kleberg, what areas of the city do you think present an opportunity for redevelopment and revitalization, and why? What resources are available to the city for this activity? Again, what areas of the city do you think present an opportunity for redevelopment and revitalization? What resources are available for the city for this activity?
Well, I would say that a real good area that would be ripe for redevelopment would be East Main, the north side of East Main Street towards the river. And the funding source there, I think, would be a new URA district put in there. I mean, it's ripe for redevelopment. It's, they've got their own little neighborhood there and stuff, but they could use some help. There's no doubt about it. The other one would be up towards, potentially up towards the airport, somewhere in that district. And again, with a new URA boundary, getting some more commercial development up there, maybe turning, Hathaway Park into a convention center, hotel, whatever. That's a source, and that's one of the reasons why URAs were created, was to help that kind of development. So,
Ms. Miller.
I think to continue to expand the development that's happened downtown is absolutely important to the city, to create a great family environment, a great place for our citizens to come enjoy a gathering space, and also for industry, tourism, to support our economy. And so focusing resources to expand the development that's already happened downtown. Obviously, funding is tight, and you just have to look at what opportunities, little they are, that you have, whether it's through granting, through the URA, through local option sales tax, whatever funding that you can get to continue that development.
Mr. Phillips.
I would say North Lewiston, or around the port area, expanding that more, try to bring in businesses, maybe heavier industrial type businesses, which would bring better jobs, higher wages. Up around the airport, around the backside of the Southport, where Blount, ATK has some stuff out there. I'd like to see, they have so many companies involved. I'd sure like to see them bring some of those jobs to here, because they've got quite a portfolio of companies they've acquired.
Mr. Randall.
Twin City Foods has got a lot of opportunity there for a convention center. And I think that would be a big plus for downtown. And Also, it could also provide transportation links throughout the community in that area. Then also the Port District that would develop more of that area for industry, and particularly incubators. More incubators provide space for small businesses to get a start. And I think that'd be a good place for providing that.
Mr. Gray?
Well, it's tough to be on the end of this question because everybody says what you're going to say, but I'll agree with the panel and just leave it at that.
Very good. Okay, at this time, it's 8 o'clock, and we're right on schedule, so we're going to move on to questions from the audience. And we're going to start this question with Ms. Miller. Lewiston has a large number of payday loan and title company businesses. These businesses are harmful to citizens and small businesses. What do you think should be done to address the harm to our city created by triple-digit interest rates? Should I repeat it?
Well, I don't think the payday loan enterprise is helpful to our economy, and it's not helpful to our citizens. And obviously, in my line of work, I see a lot of the poverty that we have here. I see a lot of people trying to work multiple jobs and figure out how they're going to make it to their next meal. And I don't think those enterprises support a healthy economy. So I think some limitation is necessary.
Mr. Phillips?
I think they're destructive. I'd like to see it mandated a particular cap on what they can actually charge instead of just being loan sharks.
Okay. Mr. Randall?
At one time, the state of Idaho had what they called a usury amount, percentage that they could charge up to. And in their infinite wisdom, they did away with that. But I think what could be an option we might look at here in Lewiston. But the other thing we have that we might use is zoning and also the issuing of business licenses. We might only allow so many business licenses in the community that do that kind of function.
Mr. Gregg?
I don't know what we could do. I would certainly yield to the city attorney to find out what we could do. I would not propose something that I don't have any idea how I would proceed. So I would look to Janet to help out.
Mr. Kleberg?
Well, and Jed brought the term up, usury rates. I mean, they keep people in poverty. They don't help them out. They just get them, sort of give them a false sense of hope, and then they're trapped in a vicious cycle. And Jed's right. State legislatures dropped the ball on this. I mean, they've had plenty of opportunities. The problem is that predatory lending business model has big bucks behind it. And they put down legislation everywhere they get a chance to. And I don't know how you get around it. I don't know if the city has the power to do it. I don't think we can control lending rates. But so they need to be responsive. Just a brief comment on it, because we had this chat, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. But, you know, if you start at 21st Street in Maine, down by the Harley shop, and head all the way out to the end of Thane Road, there are 11 title loan, instant money, pawn shops, you name it. 11 of them, just on that stretch of road. So.
Okay, moving on to the next question, and we'll start with Mr. Phillips. Capella Healthcare Systems is acquiring St. Joe's Hospital according to their website. What can the city do, and what would you do to protect the nonprofit assets of St. Joe's for these assets to remain here in Lewiston? And I'm going to repeat it. It's a complicated question, so let me repeat it one more time, okay? Capella Healthcare Systems is acquiring St. Joe's Hospital What can the city do, and what would you do to protect the nonprofit assets of St. Joe's for these assets to remain here in Lewiston?
I think that's going to be pretty difficult to do because they're going to be doing this for a profit. And we're looking at taxes that we'll be collecting from them, which is just going to go into our treasury, and we'll have more money to get some of these projects done that we need, like stormwater and other things. I don't know. I don't know how you're going to get by it when they're for-profit company. And St. Joe's was traditionally a religious, and there's separations there that have to be made. I don't know. I just don't know how you do it.
Okay.
Tax them.
Mr. Randall?
I don't think we can try to force any company to retain nonprofit status on any part of their business. I don't think it's our job to enforce that. I think it should be left up to the market to determine whether they've got a market here for those nonprofits. And if they don't, it's the company's business to do with what they want.
Mr. Gregg?
I have to believe that they're coming here because they see that there's a market here. I would continue to do the types of things that we're already doing with St. Joe, partnering with them on lots of different areas, and work to continue to create a positive relationship between the two.
Mr. Kleberg?
Well, Capella is a for-profit healthcare operation, and that's what it's all about, is for making money. They're going to need to pay property taxes. So if they're going nonprofit, that's the way it is. It's not really our job. It's going to be a big task for our county assessor, Dan Anderson, to figure out. There was a little story in the paper about it. There's 3 different ways of looking at it, I guess, for generating the property tax or assessing the property tax on the facility. I think from a city standpoint, we can facilitate them on any future plans they have for expansion, growth, things like that, knowing full well that that'll be adding to the tax base. And as we grow the tax base, of course, it loosens or relaxes everybody else's property tax burden on their homes and businesses.
Ms. Miller?
So I'm going to approach it a little bit differently in knowing the work that St. Joe's does and what their mission is. And as a city, on the city council, the mission is to support a healthy community, and that would be the same that St. Joe's would have. And I agree with Mr. Gregg, working together with them to promote that mission, protecting the assets that we can to support our community is what I would work towards, is just furthering that mission of creating a healthy community along with the medical center.
Okay, the next question, and we'll start with Mr. Randall. Do you support having chickens in town?
With restrictions. I'll say no more.
Mr. Gregg?
Yes, I support chickens.
Mr. Kleberg?
I do fully support it. It's been a long struggle. I first dealt with this on P&Z back probably 10 years ago. And we had some contentious public hearings right here in this facility. I guess the controversies died down a little bit, but I made a joke, if people were worried about enforcement, well, we could have everybody register their chickens. It costs you $5, and then we'll hire another chicken enforcement officer or something. But it's, I think it's time. This is written closely to what the ordinance Moscow has up there, and I think the potential abuse, it'll be weeded out pretty quick. Not everybody's going to get chickens, so those that are passionate about it, I think, will do a good job.
Ms. Miller?
Well, I've learned of late that people are very passionate about their chickens in this town, and I guess I never have experienced that same passion myself, but, listening and hearing what the citizens have said and reading through the code that exists now, I think that it's something we can work with some restriction. I think you have to be sensitive to all parties in that. But yes, I would support chickens, but I would also be sensitive to those that didn't, and make sure that we can all be good neighbors.
And Mr. Phillips, you can finish the chickens.
Okay, I'll finish with the chickens. I would support it, what they've done, as long as it doesn't become a nuisance to your neighbor. I mean, if it's done in a good orderly fashion and it doesn't become a nuisance to your neighbor, that's fine.
Okay. Moving on. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Gregg. Do you think it would be beneficial to have a full-time elected office official at City Hall? Again, do you think it would be beneficial to have a full-time elected official at City Hall?
No, I don't think it would be. Because they're not going to know the answer to all your questions. They're going to direct you to a member of staff. I would direct you to a member of staff, somebody that knew what was going on. I don't think that having an elected official there all the time would be overtly beneficial. It may provide opportunity for some folks to come in and chat, but for the most part, I would say no.
Mr. Kleberg.
I agree with Gordy. We've had counselors that have had established office hours down there at City Hall, and I think that's fair. If they want to just be down there to answer citizens' questions, keep 1 or 2 days a week as regular office hours, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But the council, our role as council is we're not involved in the day-to-day. We're not personnel managers. We have 2 people that we employ. That's the city attorney and the city manager. And it's their job to provide the citizens with the service that they expect, and they're both there. It might be a day or 2 when they're gone, but for the most part, that's what their jobs are. They get a phone call, and they're either going to direct them to somebody, or somebody's going to come to one of us, and then we direct them to go talk to our city manager or city attorney and say, see what you can find out. If you don't get anywhere, please give us a call, and we'll go talk to somebody else. So,
Ms. Miller.
I'd be very interested to hear what the benefit would be to have that position there, but at this point, I would agree with the mayor.
Okay. Mr. Phillips.
I would concur with the mayor.
Okay. Mr. Randall.
I would concur.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. And this is, how much, if any, does the city of Lewiston subsidize the port? And then the next part of this, which is probably the part that you might want to focus on, is would you be in favor of reviewing the status of any investment and requiring the port to pay more of its way, releasing funding for other concerns? So, would you be in favor of reviewing the status of any investment and requiring the port to pay more of its way, releasing funding for other concerns? And we'll start with Mr. Kleberg.
Well, the city doesn't subsidize the port. The city's talking about putting in rebuilding a street out there in the Port District. So if somebody thinks that's subsidizing the port, I'm not sure where that's coming from. But what my personal opinion, the port has a lot of money. And they're still taxing the citizens of the city of Lewiston. So if somebody's referring to that, yeah, the taxpayers of the city of Lewiston pay the port to the tune of, I think it got reduced to about $425,000 this year or whatever. It's not a big chunk of change on everybody's property tax bill, but by the same token, I think that's money that, they've got money, and they're turned more into a real estate development company than they have as a major shipping operation due to the loss of the container traffic. So,
Ms. Miller.
I think part of the question was, would you review the investment? and I would need to do that. I would need to review all of the issues surrounding this question, and I don't have a further answer.
Mr. Phillips,
Could you repeat that for me, please?
would you be in favor of reviewing the status of any investment and requiring the port to pay more of its way, releasing funding for other concerns?
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah. I would take a look at what they're doing. And I would, yeah,
Okay, Mr. Randall?
would free up some money.
I agree with Mayor. The city is not subsidizing, I don't believe at all. But if there's some extra money that the port has, we certainly could ask them if they could free up that money, or if it's already committed to something else, some other project that they have. But if they have no commitment toward that money, I think we have every right to ask them to put in some more if we needed it for a project such as 18th out there in the port. But you got to remember, that's the city's street. That is not the port's street. The port is being gracious by giving us money, technically. We could also be asking SWIFT to provide money too, because it's their trucks that are going across that road. But they're paying taxes just like anybody else, and that tax money, part of that tax money, not all of it, part of that tax money goes towards streets.
We need to
So-
move on, so thank you. And then Mr. Gregg?
I would agree that the city is not giving the port financial support if I follow along the same assumptions that the other gentlemen have stated regarding 18th Street. That's a multifaceted project that's being funded by the state, by the city, by the URA, and by the port. So I'm not sure the context of the question. If I'm misunderstanding that, I apologize to whoever asked it, but I would want to know more about the direction of the context of that question.
Okay, the next question will be directed first to Ms. Miller. What do you believe is a council member's relationship with the city manager and staff? Again, what do you believe is a council member's relationship with the city manager and staff?
Well, the city council, they're the policy makers. They're the ones that are providing guidance and leadership through policies and decision-making. The city manager and the staff are those that enforce that policy, those that carry out the vision, the strategic plan, and I believe the city council needs to support the city employees in that job.
Mr. Phillips?
I think they should have a good working relationship with one another.
Okay. Mr. Randall?
The primary thing with the council and the city manager is the city manager runs the functions, day-to-day functions of the entire city employees, and the council is the one that directs him to what they wish to have done. There are some aspects that sort of cross the line there, though. And I'm not saying that, the main thing, though, is to try to go through the manager most of the time.
Mr. Gregg?
I think that the relationship with the manager is an important one. It should be open. There shouldn't be any restraints between those two. The rest of the staff certainly is a support, I believe, of the city manager. I also believe that there are a lot of the departments that have their own strategic plan, that have master plans, and in some ways, I believe that the tail is kind of wagging the dog in some of those instances. And I believe that the council needs to provide a strategic vision to tie all of those plans together so that we're providing the leadership, providing the policies that are going to make the city successful.
Mr. Kleberg.
Well, I agree with what Gordy said. You know, the council should have a good relationship with the city manager. I know I certainly do. As mayor, just so everybody knows, I'm the chair of the meeting. I am no more or less than any other councilor. That's how our city form of government is set up. So we elect a mayor pro tem, and then we all debate. But I do make a point of going down to see Mr. Bennett at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, just check in, see what's going on, get a pulse for things. When it comes to dealing with city staff, and there are times when I've had questions for staff that I didn't really need to consult Mr. Bennett, and I think there's probably been times when other councilors have done the same thing, whether it's Ms. Von Tersch at Community Development or Mr. Davies, you know, picking up the phone, calling them, saying, hey, what's up with this? And if you don't, you know, if you need more clarification, then it's time to talk to the city manager, but had a pretty good working relationship with the staff.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. And we will start with Mr. Phillips. We used to have a rush hour with traffic, then 2 hours a day. Now at least 10 hours, 6 days a week, traffic congestion. How can we manage more growth with our current infrastructure? Again, we used to have a rush hour with traffic, then 2 hours a day. Now at least 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, traffic congestion. How can we manage more growth with our current infrastructure?
Well, you have transit system here in the valley. That's a good start. That can ease some of it. But you're going to have to make investments in the infrastructure in order to get that eased. I did like the idea of the turn lanes actually turning yellow now, so you could take that turn if it's open. That helps ease some of it. Newer, you know, we're moving to roundabouts, it looks like. My mother's going to have one right in her front yard up on Powers. So I think those are other things that we can do too, even though a lot of people don't like them, but saves you on power and keeps traffic moving.
Mr. Randall.
Well, on transit, I think I would like to see us work on park and ride system where you have large parking area that's available, and then the transit going from that park to another area, like say over to Tri-State Hospital to drop employees off, or down to St. Joe from the orchards, say. So, I mean, that's something that we need to look at, experiment with.
Mr. Gregg.
I think there's a lot of work being done in that vein. MPO, the Transportation Advisory Board, there's a lot of things that are trying to work to address those issues. Again, it falls back to money. We've been talking about roads forever, and we've got to be able to deal with those things. And like I say, the planning and the efforts are there. It's just a matter of trying to fund those things in a fashion that enables us to make the improvements that we need.
Okay, Mr. Kleberg.
To follow up what Gordy said, what it's going to take is money, lots and lots, wheelbarrows, semi-trucks full of money is what's going to solve this problem. So where do we get it from? You know, I mean, of course, we apply for grants all the time, and we do get some of them. You know, we've got some Department of Transportation grants and stuff, but you know, what's going to reduce some of the stuff? We need to widen Bryden. I mean, that's been talked about since 2003, and there are already design plans for it. Creating more east-west connectivity. I mean, there was an opportunity to actually punch a road between the Cable One building off of Nez Perce Grade to 17th, and one of the property owners up there chose not to participate. We had one of the property owners willing to cough up half the cost, and that would have been nice. Roundabouts it comes underneath that traffic calming devices versus traffic control devices. You know, and you've seen that, like was mentioned about the flashing yellow that we have now up at Bryden. We're working on Grell. That's going to start here real quick, so that people aren't stuck in the queue for that long waiting for a green, left turn signal.
Ms. Miller.
I think there's a lot of work being done to stay ahead of the growth. I think our growth is slow and steady, so I think it's absolutely possible to stay ahead of that. One of the things I value most about this community is the lack of traffic, to be honest with you. I've lived in places like Portland, London, a lot of metropolitan areas, a lot of even smaller towns. And I think we do a really good job, and I think the strides that we're taking are great at staying ahead of this problem.
Okay. That concludes this part of the evening, and I just have to share that when I was preparing to be moderator, my Aunt Carolyn, who's in the audience, wanted me to tell a joke, and I thought I'd make you more uncomfortable if I told one the way I tell jokes. So I refrained from that, and I'm sorry, Carolyn, just couldn't accommodate you. But I do want to take this time now to thank the audience, those here and at home, for your interest in our candidates and being informed of their positions on issues that really are critical to the city of Lewiston. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the City of Lewiston, LCSC Director of Media, Jason Goldammer, and again, the citizens of Lewiston for this opportunity to provide educational and nonpartisan voter information to the public. Most especially, thank you, candidates, for being with us tonight and for your desire to serve the citizens of the city, and really congratulations on a job well done this evening. Finally, this forum will be rebroadcast until the election every day. Check channel 13 and 56 for scheduling. Remember to vote on or before November 3rd. This forum will, in-person voting is now available at the Nez Perce County Courthouse until Friday, October 30th. Information about balloting, the sample ballot was provided to the audience. It's the yellow sheet, and there's the information to look at there. Remember, this is a City of Lewiston election for city residents only. Participation in democracy is a responsibility as well as a right. Please vote November 3rd, 2015, and good night, everyone. Thank you.